Yes, indeed. It is time for another edition, another stop at Allie's Book Club. Alice Kuiper's award-winning author joining us again today. So first of all, thank you as always for taking time out to chat with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk about books with you.
Well, you know what? You always bring some really interesting books, sometimes fiction, sometimes nonfiction, to talk about, and also to put the spotlight on at least one local author. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But the first book we're going to talk about is the third in a series, and it's in the crime genre. And isn't the crime genre the most popular genre out there? I think, statistically speaking, it is.
I feel like right now, while we're sitting with Blizzard and rising COVID numbers, there's nothing for it but to curl up with a crime novel. And so this one, No Going Back, by Sheena Kamal, it's the third one of her Nora Watts books. And I brought it to us today because although it's the third one, it's the first one I've come to of her work, and it just felt so perfect for where we're at. It's gritty and it's set in a very cold Vancouver in the main, and she's dealing with triads and possibly the kidnap of her daughter, and it's totally compelling.
What do you mean the possible kidnapping of her daughter? The kid's just not around?
No, so she's 17. She's 15 in the first book. She's 17 now, the daughter, and she gave her up for adoption when she was born. So it's this story of reconnection with family too. But yeah, that's a good question. So the issue is because it's the third one, it was a little baffling for the first couple of chapters because you're trying to catch up with everything, but yet I was still burning through the pages. I almost wish I'd started with the first one. Well,
and that's a tricky situation sometimes when you come across the crime genre, when there is a series of of books with the same character. As you go along, there's these little nuggets that the author's thinking, oh well, you read the first two, so you know what I meant when I said so and so did this and that. Oh yeah, but no, I haven't. So it can be a bit tricky. Tell me about the setting. You said it's set in Vancouver. When I've spoken to other authors who are, well known for their crime novels, oftentimes the city, the location becomes a character, especially if it's in more than one book. Would you say that's true of Vancouver in this one?
Oh, I think very much so. The detective herself, Nora Watts, or the investigator, is extremely gritty and vivid and real and quite funny, as well as being very acerbic. And I would say the Vancouver version that we see is cold and grim, and she keeps mentioning it's more cold than usual. And looking out at the water, there's this disparity between the life that some people in Vancouver have and the life that she's inhabiting. So she certainly touches on issues really well whilst darting through this thrilling story.
Now, oftentimes in the crime genre as well, there is usually and I mean this in the most respectful way, there's a second banana. Okay, there's there's a Dr. Watson, or there's a Streak Purcell, or there's someone who is the sidekick for the main character who's a detective. Is there a sidekick in this one?
It's interesting. There is another detective, a guy who runs the place where she's working to do these investigations. She sort of lets him in, but often doesn't. Often it's an empowering female message, I find, of her just thinking he's actually going to make this worse because of his previous history with the police. He's going to muddy the waters, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it all by myself, which is very enjoyable. As a female reader, I like seeing her just go about her business and solve things and work things out and take risks that she probably shouldn't, but which make it much more fun reading.
And it is certainly, I think it's the, I can't remember her first name, I want to say Janet, but Ivanovich, there are a number of different female crime authors out there who have strong female characters, and this sounds like it falls into that category as well.
I think it's just nice to see somebody who's Canadian, who comes from a diverse background and who's created a much more diverse character than you might normally see in a detective, touching on lots of the things that trouble Canadians or that Canadians think about, all wrapped up in this just completely compelling page turner. So I really recommend it. And even though it was a little confusing starting in, it didn't stop me enjoying the book. It's just if I was to recommend it to people watching, I would start with the first and work through, just because I think you'd get more out of this great series.
Fair enough. One last question before we move on to our next book. This particular book is set in Canada. We have very strict, weapons laws. Does the main character pack heat? Does she have a gat?
I think it's better that they can't. I was thinking about that with American murder books. It's so often the case that they go in and there's a big gunfight. Whereas here it has to be more subtle. There has to be more thought put into it because she can't just go around shooting people and people can't just go around shooting her too, although there's certainly menace all the way through.
There's plenty of menace to go around. Menace and malice in Vancouver. So that's no going back. Now let's move on to something a little different. It's a memoir and it's got a very strong Saskatchewan or Saskatoon connection. Tell us about it.
So Lorna Crozier was born in Swift Current and raised here. She moved to BC many, many years ago and is well known for her extraordinary poetry and writing and her long relationship with poet Patrick Lane too. So for me, as one half of a writing couple, it's lovely to read her testament to what it's like being in love with another writer, what that relationship is like. He died in 2019 of an autoimmune disease. Very hard to understand what went wrong with his body. And so she's very frank in the memoir about the complexities of their relationship and the beauty of their love affair and the way that they inspired and created together. And she's just such a fine writer. And there's cats in it too. I'm not that into cats, but I think lots of people are. It's kind of nice how she manages, even though I'm not that interested in cats, to make the cats come very fully alive on the page too.
Well, you know, they do have their personalities. There's no question about that, although albeit very standoffish. Interesting, you bring up the fact that Lorna grew up in Saskatoon, but many people here in Saskatoon may remember that Patrick Lane taught at the University of Saskatchewan for a number of years, so a strong Saskatoon connection there as well.
And they talk about the prairies even in the opening chapter where she's talking about the earth opening up in Vancouver much earlier than it does here. There's this endless reference to our climate and our gardens and our home and our landscape and how if you pay attention to the beauty here, it's here. You just have to know how to look for it.
Fair enough, then. I suspect there's no limericks, so I'll just move on. Lorna will be doing a, I'll say star-studded, but certainly star-worthy event coming up with Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, so November the 19th, Margaret Atwood and Lorna Crozier are doing an online event. So one of the bonuses, I guess, of COVID is it means that these types of events are maybe more accessible to us at home than they would have been in the past. In the past, maybe it would have been that you heard about it, but we couldn't go. So the link to attend, you just sign up and you can watch them in conversation. And Margaret Atwood lost her partner of many years recently, just as her newest book, The Testament, came out. I think she's had one more since then. So I think they'll be talking about grief and writing and relationship and memoir and story. And I think it should be a really interesting conversation and maybe something nice for readers and people who love books to look forward to through this rather bleak period of time.
Well, we're not quite in the bleak midwinter, but we're getting very close. So we'll try and, as you say, find those glimmers along the way. Thank you so much, as always. And, of course, you can go to your website to check in and comment on some of our choices for today. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.